today's session, I'll be talking you through how to prepare yourself for a successful migration to Jira Cloud. And I'll be joined in the Q&A section by my colleague James, who will bring his technical expertise to help answer any of the questions that you may have. Before kicking off, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for staying until the end of JiraCon. I appreciate our session is at the end of the day. However, it's been an absolutely incredible event and we're delighted to have you here. So in return, we want to provide value to you. So we'll be sharing a number of top tips, best practices, and at the end, we'll open up to Q&A so that you can ask the questions that you want to know, and James and myself can help answer those questions for you. So the topic today is migrations. And before going any further, it's probably best to address the elephant in the room when we start talking about migrations, and that is the timing. So as many of you will already know, the migration clock is ticking down with regard to Atlassian Server. It's ticking down to February 2024, and there's been a number of milestones over the last couple of years that we have passed through. As you can see on the slide now, these are the different milestones that we've hit, and we have the last milestone on the 15th of February 2024, when support for Server officially ends. In terms of the timelines for a migration, it kind of depends. So based on some information shared by Atlassian that you can see here, for sites with up to 1,000 users, it can take approximately 3 months. And for those larger sites with over 5,000 users, it will take a bit longer than that. Now, these dates are not, or these timelines are not set in stone. Sometimes it can take longer, sometimes it can take less time. But the point is to get started as soon as you can. If you know you want to migrate, get started. And also, most importantly as well, don't panic. Yes, the timeline is coming up with regard to the end of Server, but there are a number of solution partners and experts around the world that are available to help you. So if you are thinking about migrating, first off, don't panic. Decide what is the best course of action for yourself and reach out to a partner if you need assistance, or even speak to any contacts that you have within the Atlassian team as well. There is still time to act. So there is still time for you to make that move to cloud if you're thinking about it. And in this session today, we're just going to be focused on one type of migration. So as you can see here, there are multiple types of migrations that can occur. You could have a fresh start, and it may be something that you are considering. So a brand new cloud site, again, just leaving a lot of the data behind and starting afresh. Now, that is relatively quick in principle, but it has some obvious limitations. You have the lift and shift approach, which is, again, a viable option, and it has been done by people. But it also leaves it removes the opportunity to have a real cleanup of your data and only take across what you need. And probably the most involved type of migration is the optimize and shift. And that's the one that we'll focus on today with some of our tips and the different stages that we'll talk about. But before we move on to the stages, it's important to cover what a successful migration looks like. And there are lots of traits with regard to what a successful migration looks like. And here we captured 6 of them, which we feel are the most important. So I won't go through every single one, but just to pull out a couple. On time and within budget is something that you're likely to be asked by your stakeholders and are likely to be something that's quite important. That is always a good consideration and a good trait for successful migrations. In addition, the essential data gets migrated. And I mentioned just now about the kind of optimize and shift approach. It's important that the essential data comes across. So again, a successful migration at the end, if all the essential data has come across, that is a great sign. And the other one, which can sometimes be forgotten, is about the user experience. So it's not just the user experience before the migration and during the process, but also post-migration as well, making sure that users get started with Jira Cloud in the best possible way and that they have a great experience. And that is all within your control. But to get to that success, what are the key ingredients that you need to contribute towards that? Again, there are lots. We've pulled out 6 here, which I'll go through. So first off, planning. We'll come back to this in more detail, but having a plan is absolutely key. And very closely linked to the plan is then communicating that plan with the right people at the right time, giving them the right information. Prioritization, again, from an internal perspective, making sure your decision makers are lined up appropriately, but also prioritizing on the right areas for you in your migration. Having expertise available, whether that's in-house expertise or external expertise, there are lots of options available. Both of those can help you get to the end goal as smoothly and successfully as possible. Having tools, we are very lucky within the Atlassian ecosystem. There are a bunch of tools that can really help you. In addition to expertise, it's also good to have the tools available that can help you get from point A to point B as easily as possible. And finally, engagement. It's important to have engagement, not just from the stakeholders and the management team driving the decision to migrate, but also your users. And we'll come back to some of the top tips around this, but engagement could be the difference between a successful or a very painful migration. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there are different phases to migration. So you go all the way from the assessment phase, all the way through to the launch phase when people get up and running with Jira Cloud and they run with the new tool. We can't cover all of these phases in this talk today, and we really want to just focus in on the first two to really help you prepare for success. So we'll just stick to the assess phase and the planning phase, but also sprinkle in a few other top tips and best practices for you along the way. So starting off with phase one, assess. And for both of the phases, I've added in a little quote that kind of just summarizes the importance of each. And here you can see, without proper self-evaluation, failure is inevitable. And I think for those of you that may have already been through a migration already or spoken to people who have, hopefully you will attest to that quote being true. In terms of the assess phase, we're going to focus on three areas. First is looking at your future cloud environment. Secondly is taking the time to reflect back or reflect on your current environment in on-premise, whether that's server or data center. And then the third is seeking expertise or gaining expertise where you can. So focusing on your new cloud environment first, it's important to forward think and make sure that you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. So review any potential price differences. The prices you pay today on your on-premise version of Jira may differ in cloud. Again, the pricing system is slightly different, so it's worth doing your research to make sure that you're happy and your decision makers and the budget holders are all on the same page. There will be feature differences. So over the last couple of years, you will likely have seen tons of new features come through on cloud. Atlassian have been really proactive in this space, and lots of really cool new features are being released all the time, which is great. But it's also good for you to do that assessment and work out what the differences are in terms of the features on cloud and server and data center. In terms of the marketplace apps, the Atlassian marketplace apps, we're blessed with a huge amount of options. As I say, we create some apps ourselves, but there are tons of vendors out there that also create other apps that are fantastic. So take the time to assess the applications that you have now, but also the ones that are in cloud, and see if there are any differences, if the same apps that you have now exist in cloud, because there are some instances where they don't. It's just taking the time to reflect on that. Have a look at the user experience. The user interface in cloud versus on-premise is slightly different. And again, that could impact some of your users and their experience and the ability for them to get up and running. And then finally, it's a topic with cloud generally is compliance considerations. So again, you would have likely seen Atlassian is very focused on a number of compliance standards, and they regularly report on what they're working towards. Depending on your organization, the industries and the regulations that you adhere to, it may be worth taking the time to assess that. For some industries, it's definitely worth taking that time. Make sure that you're comfortable and you're abiding by all the rules and the regulations that you have to when moving to cloud. Now taking a step back and reflecting on your current environment, take the time to assess your environment today. So that will take a little bit of time. And what we've done is we put together this really useful site audit document, which is an editable PDF. You can find it on our booth. So if you access our booth through the JiraCon portal, you'll be able to find it as the downloadable item within the Outfox booth. Equally, if you can't find it or have any issues, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to send this to you. It's well worth it, really easy to use, and can save you a bunch of time. When going through that document, the things you'll be looking at is the amount of data that you have, the current configuration that you've got set up, how users are managed and the number of users, and also the apps that you have. And I've kind of alluded to that piece already, but it's important to take the time to really reflect on the current state of play, because that will pay off big time further down the road. And marketplace apps, as I said, we are blessed with marketplace apps, and some of them offer absolutely fantastic functionality. It's an opportunity with the migration to assess what is needed. Are they available in cloud? And if they are, what are the differences? Because some marketplace apps will have subtle differences between the cloud version and the on-premise version, and other ones may have more stark differences between the two products. And so it's important to take that time to reflect. Also use this as an opportunity to find areas for optimization. So I talked about the different types of migrations a bit earlier on in the presentation. Take this as a perfect opportunity to find areas to improve and clean up your Jira instance. So here we've named a few things, unused projects, custom fields, configurations, inactive or unused users, unused marketplace apps. This is your opportunity to really highlight where optimizations can be made. And also look for areas that you can improve. So just because you've got something set up today doesn't necessarily mean that's correct for tomorrow. So take the opportunity to review and reflect. What do I need to keep? What can be adjusted? What information can be archived or deleted? And to help you with this, we have a marketplace app ourselves called Optimizer for Jira. It's available on Server and Data Center, and it can really help you filter up a lot of this information and give you a great bird's eye view of your Jira instance. Just to give you a quick kind of snapshot tour of Optimizer for Jira, it is a tool that will really help you audit, configure, and optimize Jira. It's available in Server and Data Center. We also have a cloud version too, which I'll come on to shortly. But it has 4 areas that can really help you in this space. So first off, we have the health checks here. So as you can see, Optimizer gives you a kind of a grading for your Jira instance. So as soon as you run the product, run the app, sorry, it will give you a score for your Jira instance, which is great as like an overall grading. But what's more important is it will also show you where you can improve. So this should highlight some areas where you can make some quick wins, quick progress. And you've got a number of categories here on the screen that are being checked for different parameters. And you can see on this screenshot, projects and custom fields have been highlighted as warnings, and you can drill down into that and find out what's causing that to be flagged as a warning. And then here you can see is inactive projects and around the issue type scheme usage. So it really helps you locate problems, areas of concern, but most importantly, focus your attention where it matters. So not wasting time on areas that are not as relevant, but really honing your attention onto the areas that are important. Also in Optimizer, we have smart tables for projects, custom fields, and a lot of other configurations. And you can see here, it assembles a lot of data in one place. This is just the project smart table that you can see. But each one of these, you can click into it, you can drill into the data, you can see more, and it just gives you more of a complete picture of what your Jira instance, the state of your Jira instance, and where you can potentially make improvements. And you can also adjust these tables. So you can add columns, you can remove columns, you can bring more data in, anything that you need to give yourself that full picture and make those more informed decisions. There are a number of reports available as well. So again, with the theme of projects, you can dive into the projects report here, pick a project in Jira and really deep dive into it and find out everything that you want to know about that project. So you can see all the important information that relates to them. And finally, there's a bunch of other features, but the ones I just wanted to highlight on in the context of migrations is you can also export data to CSV too. So here you can see a smart table, you can see a number of rows being highlighted, and you have the option to either pull all of this data into a CSV file or pull out specific rows. Again, if you wanted to take that outside of Optimizer and outside of Jira for further analysis or to chat to some stakeholders, then you can do that. It makes it really easy for you. And on to phase 3 or part 3 of the assessment phase. Speak with experts. I've mentioned this is optional. It is optional, but it's most likely highly recommended from us for sure. There are Atlassian experts around the world. Migrations are one of their areas of expertise, and they would have had a lot of experience in this space over the last couple of years and can really help guide you. They can help you plan. And as I said earlier, don't panic. There are a bunch of people available to help you out. They will help you plan, but most importantly, they will also help guide you on avoiding some of the pitfalls. Migrations are complex, they are time consuming, but they're not impossible. And there's loads of people that have got tried and tested ways of managing migrations. Be mindful, these services do cost, but importantly, they are less expensive than a failed migration or a migration that causes a lot of pain for yourself and also for other Jira users in your organization. And in addition to these experts, I mentioned about the marketplace app vendors. Again, speak to them. If you're using apps currently today and you want to keep those as you move into the cloud, chat with your vendors. They're very receptive. They'll want to be able to give you the information that you need because they value having you as a customer. And in many cases, for a lot of the applications on the Atlassian marketplace, cloud migration pathways do exist. So reach out to the marketplace app vendors and have a chat about the situation that you're in and what your plans are. And on the right-hand side, there's the partner directory for Atlassian. You may already be familiar with this if you've already got an Atlassian solution partner. But if you haven't, go to this directory and then you can search for the solution partners that are local to you. And moving on to the second phase, planning. Again, adding another quote, which is a very famous quote: fail to plan, plan to fail. And that is definitely the case here. So in planning, we've got 5 steps. So step 1 is identify your stakeholders. Now, when you think stakeholders, at least in my perspective, I tend to think kind of management level, the people that are above the decision maker. But there are other stakeholders in the mix too. You've got your Jira users, and you've also got external people as well, whether you work with agencies or contractors and they are part of your Jira system. All of them need to be identified and accounted for. So a tip here is to create a RACI matrix, so it's very clear who's responsible for what and who needs to be informed at what stage. As I said, do not forget external users. It's easy to overlook that, but it's really important. You do not, every stakeholder needs to be accounted for within the migration process. With your stakeholders, engage them early. The earlier you can engage them, the better. And again, it's about clear communication and opening the communication channels as early as possible. A migration, as mentioned, is a significant amount of work. So clearly communicate the reasons why and the benefits that it will bring. So what's in it for the other person, whether that's the management team or the Jira users, what's in it for them? And an important top tip, as mentioned, we'll kind of sprinkle in a number of tips as we go. Find a group of Jira users who can act as champions for you during the process, so they can give their peers support. If there are questions that come up, if people are stuck, those champions can be that kind of gatekeeper and really help you through the process. And a top tip, you'll tend to find the best suited champions are probably those users who are more vocal, active, or engaged. So you may have a number of users that you already know that are always giving feedback or quite engaged within the process of configuring Jira and making it better. They are a good place to start because they're very active and they're engaged and they're very invested as well. So top tip there. Step 2, creating the migration strategy. Again, it's the bedrock to the rest of the process. So set your objective. What does success look like? Success isn't just migrating to the cloud. There should be more to it than just that. You need to have a thorough understanding of your current situation and also the proposed use of Jira. They may differ. You may see this as an opportunity to improve and configure your Jira in a slightly different way or a more optimal way. That's fine. This is the opportunity to kind of set that in stone, speak with experts, get some extra advice, talk with the champions, work out what's best for the organization moving forward. And at this stage, also have a look at what tools can help you migrate. So commonly known as the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant by Atlassian, but there are a number of marketplace apps. I'd mention Optimizer for Jira as an example of kind of filtering up data and helping you make decisions. There are other apps out there as well. So definitely have a look around, make a plan, and set your strategy. Identify areas for cleanup. So I've mentioned this before, but again, just to reiterate the point, this isn't a perfect opportunity to not just shift, but also optimize, improve, make sure you're only taking across the data that you need. So you may be looking to remove duplicates or unused items, for example. But a big caveat here with the asterisk, your policies and procedures may prevent you from not taking all the data across. So you may be required to take all the data. So just be sure to check off what your policies and procedures are before proceeding down that route. And establish what we're calling the fundamentals. And we'll go on to this in the next slide. So in terms of the fundamentals, there are 3 sections here: prepare, test, and migrate. So for preparation, create your rollback plan, make sure you take backups, and ensure you have a staging environment in place as an important safety net and the place you should do your testing first. Always run a trial migration and get your UAT users involved early. Try and find any of the potential pitfalls or hurdles that you'll run into before you actually run the migration for real. And then migrate. Before you do that, just clearly communicate to people when that will be. If there's potential downtime, when that will be, who will be impacted. Run the migration out of hours, and whilst you're doing the migration or slightly before, make your on-premise environment read-only. so that the data you're migrating is the source of truth and people are not adding extra data into the old environment whilst you're focused on the new. Step 4, set your timelines. Clearly define all stages. And a top tip, if you're a global organization, just take into account the users that you have situated around the world. It's important that you account for those individuals as well, because if you're a truly global organization, no matter what you do, some of your user base will be impacted. And be realistic with your timelines. There's no point setting unrealistic expectations because that leads to frustration for yourself, but also the people around you. Add contingency, add buffer, not just at the key stages, but throughout the process. And that's really, really important. And keep your timelines in a central place. So as Atlassian users ourselves, Confluence is always a great place. You may have other tools that you want to use for that, but keep a central place, update that, have it as a source of truth that people can refer to at any point. Email is great, but email is a kind of a one-time proactive communication, and it can be buried within inboxes. At least if you have a page on Confluence, for example, it's there. It's a master copy. People can refer to it when they need it. And you can also, as I say, add a banner to Jira as well, which is great for communicating holistically to people using the tool. And in terms of communications, a nice segue onto this, create your communication plan. Keep the number of channels that you're using to communicate with your users to an absolute minimum. And try and centralize those requests where possible. That will only benefit you. So if you're getting requests on email, instant messenger, through other tools like Slack, wherever it may be, the more channels you have, the more likely information is to be missed. So set your stall out early doors, choose the channels that you want to communicate, and also communicate clearly with your users where you want them to ask questions, where they can get support. And it will be a more joined up communication approach. Don't be afraid to lean on those champions. The champions are absolutely key to this, and it will save you a lot of time. Keep them informed from the very beginning and lean on them to help you guide through the process. But if you're going to lean on them, they need to be informed. You need to keep them in the loop, and you need to give them the information. The more you give them, the more they can help you. And then just some other top tips for success. We've alluded to a lot of these, but just to reiterate and to make sure that you can take the maximum value away from this presentation. Identify all the stakeholders, management, users, external teams. Really, really important. Be crystal clear on your timelines and involve the right people as champions and for user acceptance testing. For when you've migrated, and ideally you should do this before, but definitely have it in place for when the migration is completed. Have training and demo resources available for your Jira users. The cloud is likely to be a new environment for them. So make sure you've got the right things in place to help them get started as efficiently as possible. And top tip, there's tons available online. You are likely to run into some issues post-migration, and that's not an issue with the cloud environment itself. It will most likely be just the fact that it's a new environment. Users are getting used to it. There might be some general access issues. Typically, these are quite quick to resolve, but the best thing you can do is document it. Keep a note of any problems. Most of them can be resolved quickly, but you might start to notice a theme with some of the problems. So again, by keeping a document of it and centralizing those requests and making it really clear how people can get help, you can support people in the right way. And have a plan. The post-migration is just as important as the migration. So there will be work for you to do once the migration has been completed. Have a plan in place for what your post-migration cleanup looks like. And if there's one thing that you can take away from this talk today, it's please just remember that once the migration is done, the job is not complete. The post-migration is definitely just as important. So perform a post-migration cleanup, but also establish a routine to do those routine cleanups and keep your Jira instance in a really good, healthy state. You've gone through a lot of effort and time and invested a lot of resource to get you to this point. It'd be a real shame just to let that fall by the wayside. Invest and make sure that you're keeping on top of it. And again, Optimize for Jira, the product I referenced earlier, and our app can really help you here. So I would recommend taking a look. Keep an eye on the newer features being released by Atlassian. I mentioned the cloud environment is evolving a lot. There's some amazing features coming out on the roadmap, so keep an eye on that. And again, be the expert for your team. If there's a really cool feature coming out for your organization, communicate that with your users. Be the expert. Be proactive with that. Top tip, once you've done the migration, don't just tear down your server and data center instance. Keep it there as a safety net for a time being. You'll know the best amount of time to keep it for, but don't bring it down straight away. Just keep it there as an important safety net for you. And get the user feedback. Seek it proactively, because that will help you improve and it will help you get to the point where the majority of people are really happy in the cloud environment sooner. And that's all through feedback. As mentioned, we have Optimizer Optimizer in the cloud environment. I just want to show you two quick screenshots here from the product itself, but would highly recommend you taking a look. It can really just help you keep your Jira Cloud in a really good, healthy state. So first off, we have the newly released health checks. Similar to on-premise, it will scan your Jira instance, tell you where you should focus your efforts, highlight any potential problems, and give you an overall scoring for your Jira instance. So it's super powerful and would highly recommend taking a look. And secondly, the smart tables, again, very popular. Assemble all the data you need in one place, get the information you need, and make better informed decisions. Again, it's a tool that would hugely recommend, especially being post-migration. If you want to see it in action for yourself, there are two options. One, you could get a free 30-day trial from the Atlassian marketplace, take it for a spin, use it out for yourself, or just book a demo with our team, and we can chat through your use case. We can show you the features that you're particularly interested in. That's not a problem. In terms of booking a demo, you can either go through the JiraCon booth, come to the AppFox booth, and you can book it through there. Or alternatively, on our marketplace listing, there is a link to book a time or a demo at a date and time that's convenient for you. And if you need expert help with your Jira Cloud migration, I mentioned there are Atlassian solution partners around the world. The other half of our business is a solution partner, and that's automation consultants, and we offer a free consultation. So if you are interested in getting some extra support for your Jira Cloud migration, reach out to us. The link's on the screen, and would highly recommend that. It's a great team at Automation Consultants, and they've gone through a lot of migrations themselves, have a bunch of expertise that they can share. And with that being said, just a huge thank you for taking the time to join our talk. We'll open it up to Q&A now. But after this session, there is Patrick Howe from Trundle is doing the closing remarks. So yeah, we'll open up to Q&A now, and then after this session, we'll pass it back to Patrick to close out. Perfect. Okay, if you can hear me, if you could just write in the chat that you can hear what I'm saying clearly, that'd be great, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. Perfect. Thank you for confirming. So thank you for listening to the session first and foremost. For the Q&A, I'm looping in my colleague James Gwynn, who's a technical consultant here with us and has done a number of migrations. So the questions I'll pass over to him. Whilst I'm going through the questions, and we'll start with Divya, we'll start with yours first. If you have any other questions around the session, just type it into the chat and we'll make sure we get to that in the time now. But I'll start moving through the couple of questions we've had one by one. So James, we had the question from Divya around the pre-migration site audit tool, whether that is a tool or a regular discovery document that has been created for a migration. So if you could just talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the site audit document is not a tool, it's a document. And essentially what we've done is tried to just capture the most important information that would help you formalize your migration plan and track it all in a centralized location. And yeah, essentially you could go through it, look at the points and fill it in with the data, which we think would help you make a good plan for your migration, essentially. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you, James. It's just to give you structure. It won't cover necessarily every single base, but it will give you a good indication, and it's a good structure and a good guide. So moving on to the second question that was submitted by Eshwar. Does Optimizer Jira tell you about the usage of boards, as we don't have a direct way to see it?
Yeah, so Optimizer does have a table which shows your boards and their usage, which I think was the main part of the question. So it has some columns for how many times the board has been accessed and also when the board was last accessed. So I think, it's a great tool to show you whether your boards are actively used and whether you actually need to migrate them or not. So hopefully that answers your question. And yeah, if there's any more, pop them in the chat or the Q&A.
Yeah, any final questions, just chuck them in the chat. We're happy to chat through. If anything comes up after the session that you wanted to ask us, just reach out to us direct through our website or marketplace listing. We're here. We're happy to help. But yeah, if you have any questions now, we'll hold on for a few more minutes. If not, we'll close out shortly for Patrick's closing session. There's a great one in the chat. James, this one's going to be. I'm interested to hear your response. Is all I would say. So Rodney has put, what is your most unusual Jira use case?
It's hard to say off the top of my head. I would probably say the most unusual use case I've seen is using Jira as a insurance underwriter platform as opposed to a product management system. So I've seen it used as a tool to track underwriter tasks as it passes to and from other offshore teams and whatnot. So that would probably be my most unusual, although my exposure potentially hasn't been super wide, so I imagine you have some more than that, Rodney.
I've seen it used as an expenses system as well, as another example. But yeah, Rodney, I'm sure you've probably got a few stories. If anyone else has got some interesting use cases, chuck them in the chat. It'd be cool to. We've had another question from Ulas. Thank you. What's the best option to migrate private dashboards, filters, and cross-project boards?
Yeah, so I'm not entirely certain because obviously the migration assistant won't migrate private. I know it won't migrate private filters. I imagine that also extends to private dashboards. So potentially, I would say your options are to make them public and then migrate them, or you would need to recreate them. So I'm sorry, I can't really help much more than that, but that might be one for us to take away and get back to you on.
Alrighty, I think that is everything for now. Still a good number of people in the chat. So as I said before, a huge thank you for taking part in the session. Appreciate you all staying to the very end. I know it's been a long day with JiraCon and it's been a fantastic day as well. So we're very grateful for your time and your support. We'll close out the session there and I hope you enjoy the closing remarks and we're here to help. So if you need anything from us, just reach out and hope to see you all again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, everyone.